All right. So, Chuck, you're now working with your wife, Christina, and going through her swing mechanics. Now, are you starting off lead side, trail side? What's that process been like?
Yeah, so just a quick background. Christina has never played golf. Like she's hit a couple golf balls like in her life before. But she honestly like 9 times out of 10 when she swings, she misses it. And she's probably only taken 20 swings in her whole life, right? So she has no interest in golf whatsoever. And so what was interesting is I was starting, working through all of this tiger stuff that I've been thinking about for a very, very long time, and understanding how to explain things is really the trick to all of this stuff, right? Is are you able to accurately interpret what it is that I'm saying? And am I able to say it in a way that doesn't leave room for bad interpretation? So the simplest way to test that is somebody who knows nothing about golf whatsoever, like literally nothing. And that's part of the interesting thing because, a lot of times we just make assumptions, or I certainly make assumptions that what I'm saying when I say do this or do that, or we all do. We all make assumptions about everything, about what we're doing, what we're feeling, that we interpreted it right, or what have you. So the other night, I had these ideas in my head, and I'm trying to explain the backswing, like even simpler than not simpler than the dead drill, but like keeping it incredibly simple, but making it so that you can't mess it up. Like you get up in the exact right positions right away, and you can't mess that up. And I'm like, so I was like telling her, saying things like load your right hip. She's like, well, what do you mean? What does that mean? Load my right hip. And I just assume that everybody knows load your right hip means something, what I think it means, right? And so it was super eye-opening for me to realize that she had no idea what that meant. She's not an athlete. She has never done any sports, nothing like that. And so it was just kind of like an aha moment for me to realize that I need to explain things such that they're not left open for interpretation. And the trick to that is you have to truly, truly understand the movement at such an atomic level to be able to break it down to something incredibly simple. So I'm going to tell you what I did. I'll do it quick. So here's what I did with her. So I'm telling her like, here's your backswing, whatever. And I'm telling her like load her right hip, and she has no idea how to do this, right? No idea. So she's doing this. She's like, I'm not joking. She's literally like, and I'm like,
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. She's swinging around.
like, you wouldn't do that because you're a golfer, but she's not, right? So she's turning. This is a golf swing. I tell her to turn. That's a turn. I'm like, no. So I had this idea in my head to like explain it, and I was thinking about it. I'm like, I'm going to test it on her, and I'm going to get her to look just like Tiger in the backswing, and she knows nothing, right? So I said, here's what I said: right hip deep, shoulder steep. And so here's what she did. So she got her right hip deep and her shoulder steep. And then immediately I said, okay, just put your arms across your chest. And I said, get your right hip to go deep and your shoulder steep. And then she looked like this. She went from like this to like literally being like a golfer. Like without me having to like get into a bunch of stuff and like, okay, well, you got to shift your weight and you got to do this and you got to do that and your head's got to stay. I was like, right hip deep, shoulder steep. And then boom, she's like, even I was shocked. I'm like, dude, you look like a golfer. Like you're a terrible golfer. You're not a golfer. But now all of a sudden, you look like you know what you're doing. And I couldn't believe, just by changing the way that I said something to a total novice, a total newbie, that she was able to take this idea of knowing nothing about the golf swing and looking, quite frankly, better than 90% of the golfers on the planet in just minutes. Like, it was so cool. And that to me is the journey that I'm on personally, because just over, the umpteen years that I've been doing this, people don't ever do what they think they're doing. Never. Like it's never the case that somebody is doing what they think they're doing. And for me, I like to learn things myself, but it's been a long time since I've learned something athletically. So the dirt biking stuff is brand new to me. I I had a dirt bike when I was a little kid. I learned like the basics, but I never learned how to really ride motocross and hit 80-foot jumps. And I had no experience in that whatsoever, right? So over the last couple of years, and really just this year, I started learning technique, learning proper mechanics. And I'm a newbie, right? I'm not used to being the newbie at something. So for me, dirt biking is one of the last things on planet Earth that I haven't done, and that it's super mechanics based. And it's high speed, just like golf. Like you don't have time to think. So you have to learn things the right way or you'll never get it because shit's just happening too fast, right? It's just like the golf swing. And so like the golf swing, you can tell somebody 15,000 different things about how they're getting to this position and that position, what have you. And then everything falls apart. And so I started learning how to hit jumps on my bike. And that's a high risk scenario for a 47-year-old dude that's broken all the things that I've broken, So for me, I had to make sure that this was like a no fall zone experience for me. Like when I used to snowboard all the 14ers, the 14,000 foot peaks, there are areas that we call no fall zones. It's like, because if you fall, you're going to die. It's non-negotiable. So like there's places where you can take risks if you're jumping off a cornice or whatever, but there's certain places where you're like, this is a no fall zone. You can't mess around. Ice axe is out. You're ready to self-arrest. Like you're going to jump off this thing on your snowboard, but then you have to check up right away. It's a no fall zone. Well, dirt biking is like 100% of the time no fall zone for me because I just can't risk an injury at this stage. My back is too fragile. My neck's too fragile, all of this stuff. And my wife will absolutely kill me in the grave if I get injured, right? So I'm like, okay, how can I learn to do something that's inherently wildly dangerous and do it very safe and learn proper mechanics and become a student again? Because I think that's one of the funnest things about life to me is learning something new. Like it doesn't matter what it is. If you're just truly learning, and I'm fascinated with the human body, obviously. So doing something with my body, not just my mind, is super interesting to me. Can I get my body to do this? Can I get it to do this? Can I learn this? And so with the dirt bike, I think in my head that I look like Jet Lawrence, who's like the greatest motocross racer in the world right now. When I see myself on video, I don't look like Jet Lawrence at all. I look more like Napoleon Dynamite. I think I look one way, but I'm not. And so that also led me to understanding, again, just becoming a student again is helping me become a much better teacher. And then taking somebody like Christina who knows nothing and get her to move right, who doesn't make assumptions about the swing, is super interesting to me because I think that's really where we have to get to at some point. Like the swing has to be basic enough and explained with the exact right words in the right way so that anybody can get the big picture basics of it. Because if you don't, golf is really, really not fun, right? It's a struggle. It's literally just a struggle. I mean, I'm on Instagram now, as you know, and all of these golf memes I see are just people bashing clubs and throwing shit into the lake, and like they're pissed off. Like that's kind of the connotation of golf. Like if I look at Robin Williams, golf is a 4-letter word, right? And I'm like, it's bizarre that we still keep doing it, and we don't get dramatic. Most people don't get dramatically better, and I've always said it's instruction's fault. Whatever you're doing, like when I started learning how to ride a dirt bike, I went to this guy who I'm going to go see in Austin next month, Tyler Livesey, and he's a motocross coach. He has MX Factory on Instagram and on YouTube, and so I started watching his videos, and he explains riding a dirt bike much like the way I explain the golf swing, just like simple mechanics and so on, and I learned in a productive way, in a safe way, and in 3 years of riding, I've had one crash, and it was something dumb that I was doing that I didn't realize. I didn't have the right mechanics. I didn't have the right understanding. And so what I'm trying to do with the golf swing is make it so that you don't crash, that you can learn and not crash all the time, because that's what I think most golf is like 95% failure and then a couple good shots, So yeah, this is a really, really fun and interesting time for me to just think about things differently and take all of the knowledge that I've accumulated over all these years and see if I can't put it to work and just in a way that everybody can make a huge, huge improvement really quickly. Like like you've learned and like what Venkatesh learned, and but even making it simpler still. And so that's what I'm kind of doing, is just boiling it down to, the electrons and protons and neutrons. Like, we got to make this stuff really, really simple. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, no, it sounds like fun. And you said a few things there. The first thing I'm thinking about is feel versus real, because I think for a lot of us, as we're doing movements and drills and the dead drill or the Axiom throw, we think we're doing a move right. And you can, if you're on the range and you're posing after shots and you think you look good, but then when you go back and look at the camera, you're like, holy crap, I look nothing like I'm supposed to. And I think a lot of that has to do with what you're talking about, where movements have become so technical, where we're forcing ourselves to get into positions. And it seems like, and listeners also, I don't know if you can add to this, but it seems like certain people can just get it. And then a lot of us are just kind of stuck, and we think we're doing it right, but then we're really not. And then we think the program sucks, or there's an issue, or we suck. So it's almost exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the bottom line, is that you're right. Certain people just seem to kind of naturally do a lot of the core things really well. And then I've seen a lot of those guys get their swings wrecked over time by going and getting coaching that's either bad coaching, or they're misinterpreting what they're saying, or there's just like there's some disconnect, right? For everybody, there's some disconnect somewhere. There's just something that you're not getting. And if you just heard it the right way, it would click. Right. And that's where we always have like these light bulb moments and stuff. But for me, I have to kind of take a different approach to it, and not, like, part of my problem as a coach is that I can do all these things and I've done them for a long time. So there's a lot of assumptions that I make about things. And then I watch my students who, might come to me for the first lesson, and the first time they come here, I'm like, wow, you're not doing anything like what you think you're doing, but they intellectually get it, right? Like, I hear that all the time. I know exactly what you're saying. It makes perfect sense. I understand the physics, the biomechanics, the anatomy, all this stuff. I just can't do it. And that, to me, is the problem that has to be solved. That's it. If we can just break it down into explaining it in a way that just doesn't allow you to mess it up, that's the secret, I think. Because not everybody has to have, like, quote unquote perfect swing mechanics to play great and play at the level that they want to for the amount of time they put into it or what have you. But you do have to have the big, broad strokes, right? Like, if we just have, like, a lot of times people get so focused on the nuance and the detail that they miss the forest for the trees a lot of time. And so it's getting the broad strokes of just like the basic motion of what swinging a golf club really is. And this is part of the challenge too, is that there's many ways to skin this cat, right? Like, for me, my number one criteria has always been injury prevention, and everything else is secondary to that, right? So, but there's other people who don't care about injury, right? Like, and not everybody's going to get injured by doing something that would potentially injure you or me. They just might, for whatever reason, they're super flexible, or just genetically they have certain loose ligaments or tendons or whatever that allows them to move in a certain way, and they may not ever get injured. Maybe they don't hit enough balls. Who knows, right? There's just a million variables. But for most people, it's a big issue. Most people get hurt, or they're very sore after golf, and then if they play enough, that becomes a chronic thing, and then it becomes an injury, and then it becomes debilitating. And so that's always been my number one priority. But the reality is, like, there's 50,000 different ways that you can hit a golf ball successfully with the worst mechanics in the world. But is it going to give you the power that you need? Are you going to get injured? Are you going to be consistent with it? Is it safe? All of these things are things that you kind of have to balance into this equation. And is it fun? At the end of the day, we all picked up a golf club not to get a job. Nobody went to the golf club or the driving range the first time and said, okay, now this is my first time ever touching a golf club, and I realize this is going to be a 30-year battle for me. Nobody went to the golf course with that intention, right? But that's where everybody ends up. If you become passionate about the game, it becomes a lifetime search, a journey of trying to find answers to things that seem very, very confusing and conflicting. And that's really kind of the crux of it, because it's got to be fun first. And so, like, when you came out here, when I first met you, I was like, the first thing I've got to do is get this guy power, You gotta have power or golf sucks. And everybody has resolved to think that they just can't swing any faster than they do. And I try to use like some basic logic. If you look at the average tour pro, these guys are not fitness gods. They're not Laird Hamiltons out there, right? These are just regular Joe Schmoes. Now, some of them are phenomenal athletes, and that's definitely changed, which you've seen with, the club head speed, how it's increased over the years. But at the end of the day, it's just a guy that knows how to move really well. And most guys and gals don't know how to move their bodies properly at all.
Do you think that's because of instruction, of trying to get into these technical positions?
For sure. I mean, I think the hardest thing about golf is that there are quote unquote positions that are, you obviously don't want to be extremely laid off. You don't want to be extremely inside. So we have like ideals, but the reality is that all of those ideals should be effects and not causes. They should happen as a result of this underlying thing, and it shouldn't be something that you're trying to hit this position and then hit this position and then hit this position, and then you never question, well, how do I get through all of those positions in a natural way? Most golfers don't think that. They think, I just got to hit these different spots because my instructor told me to. And that's also a very great way to lead to a lot of confusion and frustration. Like when I first did my takeaway video a long, long time ago and talking about how this right shoulder blade glide initiates a centered turn, right? If you just pull your right shoulder back, you stay really centered. And then I'd have people who do literally nothing but that and like, okay, well now what? Like, but that's not the whole thing. It's to initiate centered rotation, right? So those are things where like I have to be very explicit about the way that I explain things, because some people will just take that and that's the whole thing and that's it. I'm like, well, no, it's just part of this overall motion, right? So yeah, it kind of brings us back full circle to just teaching somebody who knows nothing about golf whatsoever. And what are the words that I would use to explain this to somebody who knows nothing, literally nothing about golf? And I think that's probably going to be one of the ways that we get to a point where you can take anybody and get them in the ballpark really quickly without a ton of work.
Yeah, that was the biggest breakthrough for me. Is I didn't really have to think about, because I'm very round in my swing. I kind of bring the club very far inside. Mm-hmm. And with this move, it was like almost instantly I kind of naturally got to different positions. Mm. And then also it's actually a fun drill where I can go on the range, I could hit balls. I don't have to, go in front of my bathroom mirror and just do these movements over and over and over again and force myself not to hit balls. So, and it's very athletic. It's an athletic move. You could feel your body kind of, want to get and power through the ball. So I can definitely see what you're saying there. I think for a lot of us who, have been on this journey for a while and are trying to get better with the game, it's piecing together movements that are natural and kind of feel natural to us. And the cool thing about the throw is it's almost like we can all do it. And it's something that we all have kind of done throughout our years, but it also could kind of fit in the swing. So how did you, what made you think of the starting trail side versus lead side? How did you come up with this concept?
So that really was down to what's the fastest way to get somebody power. That's the simplest way to think about it. When you were hitting it 220, 230, 240, what have you, and you need to get up to 280, 290, what's the fastest way to do that? And obviously you were only here for a short period of time, and I'm like, okay, in a day, how do I get this guy speed? Well, there's a million different ways, again, that you can kind of start trying to figure this out. But in terms of getting speed right away and having some semblance of a proper swing plane, because you obviously got to be on plane too. It doesn't do you any good to swing 20 degrees into out or 20 degrees over the top. So you need speed, you need a proper swing plane, and you need to be able to release the club face. And those three things, because they are central, they're core to playing fun, enjoyable golf. The fastest way for most people to do that is with the basic throwing motion. When I teach people how to use the lead side, the problem is they think that the lead side is producing power, but it's really your core and your legs that are producing power on the lead side, and your arms are very relaxed. But I see people all the time say, oh, I'm lead side, and they just yank it down with their lead arm. That's the exact opposite of what your lead arm is supposed to do. So I put that clip of Ernie Els at the beginning of one of the videos. Is like, I feel like my left arm falls. But if you're not using your legs and your core, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And the problem is, how many people have an idea of how to move their core and engage their core and engage their glutes and their hamstrings? Most people don't understand that. And so I said, okay, I'm just going to make the assumption that we're not going to go down that road because it's going to take much longer for you to learn how to use your legs to post up, use your core for speed and all those things. But I bet you can throw. And if you can throw and you understand this basic motion, you can get the club on plane, you can get crazy amount of speed because you've got all this leverage, and then you can release it so you can actually hit the ball straight and far and not just slice it off the planet or block it off the planet. And it also tends to lead to a natural draw ball flight. So that to me was like, okay, because originally when you came out here, the goal was, let's see how fast we can get this guy to break 80, just out of curiosity. And then it was like, okay, breaking 80, there's so many more complex things that go into that. There's short game, there's course management, there's putting, there's just basic overall strategy that there's too many variables in there for most people. I'm like, all right, but if we can get him just hitting the ball properly right away, he's going to have a hell of a lot more fun. Now he's got to go do his own work on his own time to be able to take that to break 80, to take that to the course. But this was a really quick way to get a quick win and get somebody hitting these 3 key points: plane, speed, path, club face angle.
Yeah, that was the interesting thing about the movement is that, I felt like a lot of the post up kind of happened naturally when you throw properly. And that was one of the things I was struggling with for a while, other than taking the club inside and not be able to kind of feel it go in front of me and get the speed. Because I've been so stuck for such a long time where when I go into the ball, I could not feel my right arm kind of come through.
Yeah.
And I think that's the challenge, that a lot of us don't really know how to use the right arm or the right hand, or when we try, we create issues like the casting or like flipping, and then we start shanking and we do all types of funny things.
For sure. I mean, this is the difficulty with the game, is that if you could take a concept, whether it's being lead side or right side, and if you do it wrong, it doesn't matter if it's the best idea in the world, you're still going to get bad results. If you don't know how to use your right arm to throw correctly, you're not going to get good results. If you don't know how to use your left arm correctly, you're not going to get good results. Which just brings us back full circle to the idea of the way that somebody interprets and processes information is kind of like the final frontier. That's the final test, is explaining something in a way that anybody can get it. And that's look at the guest of honor shows up. Welcome.
Oh, I didn't get the dang invite, and I by instinct I sent Pedro a friggin' email.
Oh no.
I did not get the invite. I bet you it's in junk, man.
Oh no. Well, welcome on. We're excited to have
Sorry,
you on.
guys. I'm so sorry.
You're like the celebrity golfer online. Everybody's talking about you, man.
It's thanks to Chuck, I have to tell you. I don't know about celebrity at all.
Oh, we're excited to have you on. I keep hearing you're shooting, 70s almost every single round now. And I think a lot of us who have, been playing for a while are just, curious what was that process like for you? So I guess we could kind of start off, how did you get into the game?
So look, I mean, I've always loved golf, right? I've always loved golf, but I used to work maybe 60, 70 hours a week. So I was literally once or twice a year golf. Or when I go to South Africa, the goal was to beat my brother-in-law, who's an absolute golf fiend. So that was the genesis behind that. I love golf, right? Just the swing of it. I play cricket, I play tennis. So this is a natural evolution to something like that. But when I really got into it after I kind of semi-retired in 2020, right? So I lived in Connecticut for 3 years. And, I kind of, once that gig was done, came back to SoCal, and then COVID hit. So it was natural, right? You had to fill my time. And then it started to frankly become an obsession. Guys like me, frankly, I'm always looking for a new challenge, right? Because the work challenge is done. So what else can I do to get better, right? What else can I do to keep occupied? The drive to get better is always there. And this was like a perfect thing, perfect marriage. So I mean, it's such an incredible challenge, right? So first, I started with, okay, got to break 90. Okay, now that came fairly easy.
Oh
The
wow.
breaking 90 came pretty easy. And then, and then I stayed at 88, 89, 90 for a long time, for 2 years. And then it started to click. The short game, I did a lot of pitching, a lot of putting, a lot of pitching. Frankly, I didn't
A
have
lot of short game.
a non-existent pitching and chipping, right? So that's something that I worked on incessantly. And then you figure from that 80, 88, 89, then getting to that sub 80 needed power, right?
Right.
Because that's when the dam broke loose. Frankly, I mean, after I saw that power video, is when I started to consistently. Well, you have to term consistency, and you got to put that in context, right? So every 5 rounds, I'll have 2, maybe 3 rounds sub 8. That's the level of consistency so far. And I think you should, just for the podcast or whatever we're doing here, I would say count on 2 for now. And this is, remember, maybe 6 weeks in, 5 weeks
Wow.
in. When did you put the power video? I think I saw it the next day, I think.
Yeah, it's been maybe a month or so. I can't
So a
remember.
month or so. So since then, I would say 40% of the time, I'm shooting where my goal was when I started this.
Wow. And that was just from picking up power? Like you're
Just power, right?
wow.
Because because again, remember what the power video does. It lets you get that arm in the pocket and shallow out the club and then get that lag. And that's when starts all clicking.
Did you struggle using your right versus your left? Like initially?
Oh,
Was
100%.
huh.
100%, right? But then it was an easier transition, right? Because the right is a more powerful thing. It was a struggle with the left. Because I followed the rotary, everything dead drill and on. So what I forgot to tell you in this conversation is that from 2020, I went and did the stack and tilt crap.
Oh.
It beat up my body so bad you would not believe.
Huh.
So then somebody in passing, I'm trying to remember who it was, said, try rotary swing. I went and saw that, and I saw that whole thing, the movement, and I said, shit, I'm hooked. I'm 100% hooked on this. And it became so easy. So again, there, everything was, I still so vividly remember that truck that he pulled. So it was all, pull versus push. And then that's what I religiously followed, and it took a while to get there. There's no question about that. I think this is where, Chuck, you were saying in that video, was that now to get to the right hand is much easier because that is my dominant hand to begin with, right? I played tennis with my right hand. I was a college tennis player, man. I played number 2 singles, so I could play like, level 5 in paddle tennis and pickleball, for example. So the right side dominance and that swing was very natural. And all I had to do was to bring my damn elbow and get the elbow to the pocket. That is so natural for me as a tennis player. And that's what started to, and you see the excitement because this morning I spent an hour and a half doing exactly that, the shadow practice, to get that thing as part of muscle memory so I don't have to remember that anymore. And then everything becomes feel. Yeah.
Go ahead, Chuck. What were you going to say?
Oh, it's what you're saying is kind of where all of this stuff really stemmed from. Is that we've like we said, there's a million different ways to skin this cat, but for most people, they're naturally right-handed playing golf with right-handed golf clubs. So the trick is when you use the right hand incorrectly, which most people do, you end up swinging over the top. Or you use the
Yeah.
right side of your body, right? And Venkatesh was over the top when we first started out, right? So he was severely over the top, and then I'm like, okay, power, plane, path, or path and club face angle are directly related, right? So in terms of how they release. So I was like, okay, the fastest way for me to get him there in a natural way, but again, it's really just about speed. It was about efficacy. Like, how fast can I get him to do this? I still have a deep spot in my heart for a lead side Ernie Els classical golf swing. I love it. And I'll tell you the best, like, I'm sure you guys can relate to this, but like the best, there's 2 days in my life, maybe 3, that stick out golf wise. For the days that I remember that it was just effortless and I could not make a mistake. I remember one time, and well, I just played 9 holes in the afternoon with a buddy of mine up at my course in Idaho, and it was everything was perfect. It was a sunset late in the afternoon, just me and my boy, only 2 guys on the course. The deer are out, the rabbits are out, and we're out on the lake or overlooking the lake on the golf course. And I shot 4 under over 9 holes, but every single shot was 15 yards further than normal. And I literally just felt like it was just my left pinky swinging the golf club, right? It's a feel. But that effortless feeling for me is really what is addicting to me personally. I love that ball rocketing off the face and feeling like I don't do anything to do it. But that takes time to learn how to use your legs. I'm getting all the power from my glutes and my hamstrings and my quad and my left leg. But now if you ask me to kick a soccer ball off my left leg, I would look completely useless. You ask me to throw a ball off my left arm, I'd look completely useless. The only thing the left side of my body knows how to do is hit a golf ball. Outside of that, it's useless. For most people, it takes so much time for them to learn. Like, you're using the opposite hemisphere of your brain, and it just takes so much time. And then people are so addicted to getting power right away that they start pulling hard with the left arm. And like you heard Ernie Els, the left arm has to fall. There's sequencing, there's timing that's involved in this. And it's a far more core-driven golf swing. The right side's still core-driven, but you can add a lot of right arm thrust and not have to use your body so aggressively. So like, you guys have heard me explain this before, but like, I like to think of the golf swing as an equation, and you're just trying to balance out that equation. So you've got width, rotation, and leverage. And leverage, you can use a lot of it and take some rotation out. But in a left side dominant swing, you have to have rotation because you're not using that right arm thrust very much. But it's how you want to balance those things. But I think in most people's cases, using their dominant hand to get the power right away so that they don't try to use the left side incorrectly to produce power, it just it cuts through a lot of stuff for a lot of people who have like a basic throwing pattern already kind of ingrained.
Now, V, do you feel your lower body getting engaged while you're doing this move? Like, what are you feeling?
So what I'm feeling a lot of ease, right? So I feel no pain, which is one of my big criteria, right? So I just had my knee surgery, so to not feel any pain is a big deal. Yep. What I truly feel, it's I have to think about what you just asked me, right? So what I really feel is everything coming together like a really good aesthetic swing. So I believe a lot in aesthetics because a good form will always be very conducive to long-term sustenance of any sport. Like whether it's basketball and you shoot and you have a good form, in tennis the same way, and in golf the same way. With this, what I feel is I have a great golf swing. So in the rounds that I've played after I watched the videos, I've never felt an awkward swing. And that's the best feeling that I have. I haven't really analyzed or thought through how I feel in my lower body just yet. All I'm trying to do is to say, okay, do I feel as if the swing that I just had, whether it's a driver or a 7-iron or a pitching wedge, feels good to me when I swing, is where I'm at right now. I hope that makes sense because before, I sent a video to Chuck where I took a 3-wood and I tried to hammer it 300 yards, which is, and I was like all over the place. I came from over the top. My left hip was probably in another time zone, that type of stuff, type of swing. And I hit that 247-yard 3-wood pure. I mean, I hit it super pure and it felt so good that I finished the whole thing because it was like skipping the rock or getting the elbow to the pocket and then just hammering that through. So it helps me easier when I finish the swing, if that makes any sense. Because I don't have to think through the contact or anything like that. So when I do this, when I follow exactly that feel, I finish the swing 100% of the time.
Ooh.
That is an incredible feel for an amateur because in my previous swing, I would hit the ball and then I would stop, which is to say that I would push the damn ball to the right? Because when you block it, so here it's so much easier to finish the swing and the block kind of disappears.
Ah.
I,
A block was your, that makes total sense. I mean,
right?
because,
Because,
yeah.
yeah, if I don't finish the swing, I end up blocking it. And this, because of how I'm doing this, everything works just fine. It just rotates, everything falls in place, and I finish the swing. And that has 10 yards in my books. Just
Wow.
from a pure technical sense, I have 10 yards just from the finish of that swing, is how I'm thinking about that.
Wow. So now you're in the position where you're posing and you're able to
Bingo.
swing through the ball.
Bingo. Yeah.
And with the dead drill, did you feel as if you were kind of stuck in a way with not being able to turn the club over?
No,
Okay.
no, it's not that case. I mean, that's why, we're amateurs, right?
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah,
an
totally.
amateur, pure and simple amateur. So for me, that white devil, as Chuck calls it, is very, very resonant. So once you hit the damn ball, you're like, okay, now I want to go watch
Right.
it, as opposed to finishing the swing, right?
Ooh.
This feel lets me finish the swing because I no longer am watching the ball, so to speak. I'm more focused on the feel of getting through the club, getting through the ball and finishing on it,
Ooh. I have a
right?
few questions on, how you're practicing this. Are you doing this like, for a few hours a day, just doing the move? And then how are you taking that movement to the course?
Yeah. So look, I don't know if everybody can do this, right? But I practice in front of the mirror. Like I have a mirror in my office right now. I mean, and I
Oh, wow.
practice in front of that, right? I mean, constantly, right? So I have a few clubs in my office, and I go practice that. And then I have a really nice setup in the backyard, sans mosquitoes. This time of the year when it becomes cooler, there are no mosquitoes. But so then I go practice that. Then I'll go to the range sometimes. So it's a there's no real formula. But
Hmm.
in a day, I can tell you I either watch Chuck's videos or do something like this on an average of about 4 hours a day. And frankly, you don't need to do that. If you just practice, even in front of a mirror, if you practice that whole thing of that power move, I mean, the whole thing is so exciting. So when I practice that power move, I can feel my hand release. And that's the feel that you need to carry to the golf course, is my point of view. And every time you do that, it clicks. Anytime you don't do that, you hit a bad swing. I mean, that's where my game is, okay? I'm not saying this applies to everybody and such, but quite literally, you guys, I practice that, right? And once I get there, look, I'm
You're
releasing the
extended
damn
out.
club every time. So once I get that feel and I make that part of my muscle memory, guess what? The elbow falls in place, and boom. That's what I do. That's what I do for 3, 4 hours a day.
Wow. No, I'm going to start doing the same. I mean, I piloted the power program. I picked up, 30, 40, maybe like, well, one drive was like 50 plus yards. But for me, I wrap my arms this way. So I kind of take the club here and then I come far inside. So the power move helped me get this right arm in front. But I didn't know like the role of the right arm? Because I like you, I found the dead drill program, and I was kind
Right.
of focused on the lead side, and I just finally got to the part where my left
Right.
arm can like extend out. So I was up just part three. But then with the right side, it was like instantly just be able to kind of come through, and you don't really have to think about the
Right.
movements. You're just kind of firing in. It feels more athletic.
Yep. Pedro, none of the dead drill, I've not lost any of the dead drill. This is not a new swing for me, right?
Yeah.
You still have to turn your shoulder and the weight shift has to be done. And then the big difference for me is that consciously I'm taking my right hand and moving across this way. Everything else from the dead drill still applies from a mechanics perspective. Here, I'm simply bringing the feel into my swing, which I did not have. Because before, everything dead drill, and then I would go all over the place.
Ah.
Remember, the big key to hitting that, striking the ball for me, beside the dead drill aspects of it, is to getting my arm to release and getting that lag because your elbow is coming to the pocket.
Huh.
Everything else on the dead drill still applies to me,
So for you,
right?
you're
I
not.
don't know, Chuck, if you agree with that or not, but I don't think any
100%.
of the dead drill gets obliterated as a result of that.
No, not at all. It's kind of funny. Like if you go back and look at old videos that I've done from like 2005,
Yeah.
2006, there was a ton of right hand stuff in there. In fact, like their shaft releasing and getting speed from that, it's all right hand stuff. The reason that we started doing more lead side stuff is because nobody had a clue how to use their lead side. And they all way overused their right side and did it incorrectly. And so we're like, gosh, the more right side stuff I talk about, the more I see people just swing over the top of the right side. They don't get it. And so we're like, okay, well, if we train them to balance it out with the lead side, they're already overusing this side. So even if I tell them don't use your right hand, you're still way overusing it, right? And so that's why we did this. So a lot of our stuff is based on like what we see in swing reviews. We've done over 100,000 swing reviews now, right? So we've seen so many different things, and we watch. Like Craig has been with us. I don't know if you've had any lessons with Craig. He's been with me over a decade. I taught Craig when he played on tour. Like, so Craig and I have been together for 15, 20 years or something. And so he is literally like Rotary Swing Rain Man. He knows everything I've ever said, written, like verbatim. It's crazy. But he is like an encyclopedia of understanding what golfers really do because he's done the bulk of those reviews. And so when you see something tens of thousands of times, literally tens of thousands of times, and as we've evolved our teaching and tried different ideas, tried to get things to explain it a different way, it's always been, in many ways, not just my own, it's kind of two different ways of thinking about it. I'm proactively thinking one way, and Craig is reactively thinking another, and we try to put those two together. He's telling me, hey, Chuck, you came up with this idea, and here's how people are interpreting it. And I'm saying, okay, well, what do I need to do next, right? And so that's kind of how we've put the programs together. And so the dead drill was in response to people overusing the right side incorrectly. Okay, we got to balance it out. You got to learn how to use your body. You got to learn how to use your arms, and so on. But it was never meant to be no right arm at all. I've always used my right arm in my swing. It's just less and less and less as your body works more and more. And so but again, the idea of, I know you guys, every golfer out there probably understands that pushing up off the ground with your leg makes the club release down. Like that obviously makes sense. But to do that, to really properly do it at the right timing, with real power, with real speed, it's a pretty athletic thing. And not everybody has that athleticism. They just don't. Not every, and even if they do, it would take perhaps a long time for them to get it, because if you fire your right arm or your right side incorrectly at the top, you'll never be able to use your left side correctly because it throws all that off. And so that's what we really run into is sequencing is the name of the game at the end of the day. And if one little thing is out of whack at the beginning, like in Pedro in your case, you roll that left arm immediately off the ball. Well, you're done. Everything's reactionary from there forward, right? So that's the kind of stuff that we're dealing with. Like if I took your swing and Venkatesh's swing, they're polar opposites, right? But I was able to give both of you the same solution and get a same result. And that's kind of the secret to this stuff is how do you give two completely disparate problems the same solution and get them to work for both people? And that's where we're trying to always find and walk that very delicate, thin line of the happy medium. because we're trying to help not one golfer, two golfers, or three, but
Right.
hundreds of thousands or millions of people. And if you take 1,000,000 golfers, every single one of those will have a wildly different swing, and every one of those will have at least 50 of their own variables. So now we've got 50 million different things we're trying to fix, and it's just a crazy complex problem. But the more that I go down this path of trying to make it simpler, the more I think about the complexities of it, the simpler it becomes in my mind. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, is giving somebody something simple that they can't misinterpret and that they can physically do very quickly, and it reaches these goals of power, plane, and path, face angle. So yeah, so it's never been just all one arm or the other. It's always supposed to be a balance of these two, and you can add more or less of whichever. If you want to add more body speed, well, you don't need as much arm speed. You've got a bad back like I do, then you need to take body speed out and add more right arm. That's what's cool about it, is that you can still look like you're doing much of the same things with little tiny variations if you have the broad strokes, if you have the big picture of what the golf swing really is. But until you have that, then worrying about lead side or trail side or this or that, it's missing the boat. We got to get the broad strokes in a way that everybody can do big picture stuff, which is what the dead drill core was, right? Step 1, 2, 3. That's it. And most people could do that really quickly. And we saw that in our swing reviews. Okay, and again, we're doing remote stuff. So if people sending us a video, we're not working with them hands-on in these cases, and we're seeing, okay, they can all do this. And we saw that right away. Okay, that was a huge step forward, because most people, they're doing this in the swing and going all over the place. Okay, that worked. Now, what do we do next? What falls apart next? What does the student misinterpret? And with the dead drill, the only thing that we saw consistently, because we'd have people spend the time, they do the work, and they got the arms in the right spot, and they got the hit, everything looked beautiful. The part that things broke down was blending it all together as one motion. It became a group of positions. I'm like, no, that's not it. So the Axiom was a way to glue all of those positions and make the same things happen automatically without you having to think about, how do I group a bunch of things together? Because that's what people will do. It's interesting. If you give somebody really explicit instructions, they will typically follow those like this. All right, we'll put our blinders on and we'll march into a war, and we'll stand in front of the mirror and be like, okay, I got it. This is it, right? I'm like, it is, but it isn't. It's this. It's all one thing, right? And so the Axiom was my attempt to take the dead drill and put it in automatic. And that's kind of, there's always going to be, there should be an evolution as you're learning more, as you gather more information, as you try different things, you see more results. Then you always are trying to tweak it. At least I am always trying to make it a little bit different, a little bit easier, a little bit smoother, a little bit faster, and just trying to get people to make it click quicker. And again, and now with this process now of talking about Venkatesh, before you got on here, I'm tinkering around with my wife, because she doesn't play golf at all. She knows nothing about golf, literally nothing, and has zero desire to play. So taking her and explaining to her, how do I get her to swing like Tiger Woods, to look like Tiger Woods, and of course that sounds like an outrageous attempt, but we already got a couple big pieces of the puzzle to fall into place right away. And I'll show you real quick, because this will actually probably help you with kind of your basic throwing motion. So all I was telling her was, if I tell somebody to turn their hips in the backswing, everybody's going to take that a different way. This is a turn, and that's what she was doing. She was doing this. I'm like, she's not wrong, but saying turn your hips in the backswing, that can go 50,000 different ways.
Yeah.
And it's really not a turn, because if you turn and then you turn your hips first, then you actually put a lot of shear force on your spine, because your hips are going one way while your upper body's going another, and that, if you do that a lot with a lot of speed and a lot of power, that ends up really ugly really fast. So to get her to stop moving way off the ball and doing all this other stuff, again, trying to explain it in really simple language that anybody can understand, I said, all I want you to do is get your right hip deep and your shoulder steep. And so immediately, instead of turning, because we think of the golf swing as a backswing turn, it's really not. The hip is getting deep and the shoulders are getting steep. And then all of a sudden, she's like, hey, I look like a golfer. And I'm like, okay, keep driving that hip back and turning it until you start to fall onto the left side. So it's hip deep, shoulder steep, fall. So now, in those 3 words, I got her into a proper position where her hips, a lot of golfers stand up, they do all kinds of stuff. I got her hips into a proper position, shoulders, proper position, and a transition, which is 3 words. And in a way that she really couldn't, there's kind of ways that you can mess this up, but not really. But for her, explaining to her, she doesn't feel like the backswing is a turn at all. She doesn't feel like she's turning. She just feels like her hips going deep and her shoulders going deep. But can you argue that I turned? Of course I turned here, right? But it's the way that I got her there, the words that I had to use to get this potion, and then to make the transition happen naturally. And then from there, working on getting this left hip deep and the shoulders turning through. And all of a sudden, she's starting to look and move like a golfer. And so these are the kinds of things that I like to think about is how do I get anybody to do this really quickly? And
that'll fix a reverse pivot too.
Exactly. And when you reverse pivot, you're doing the opposite, right? Your hip is not going deep, it's sliding, right? And so your glute medius, this muscle right here, you'll feel this engage. You actually need to feel something very different. If you just think about your hip going deep, then it gets you there, right? So I think that I can do a better job of finding a better vocabulary for this that makes these things fall into place a lot easier.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, the throwing motion for me helped a lot just to kind of simplify things, because I think like a lot of golfers, like I'm not like a lot, but I'm not that detail oriented at times. So I will skip through things, especially in the dead drill. I would kind of skip through the minor details of the swing, and that would reroute everything in the wrong direction, even though conceptually I thought I knew what I was doing. But being able to kind of feel it versus kind of forcing technical positions and moving, like, Venkatesh, like you were saying, like you just kind of focus on moving and releasing through. I think it's going to help a lot of people, especially me, because now I'm thinking about, okay, cool, when I go to the range today, I'm going to be thinking about kind of the feel and kind of moving through the release instead of jamming my body and forcing it into like the right places. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, look, ultimately it is about scoring, but there are rounds that I've played where all I wanted to do was to feel a certain way, whether it's the ball hitting flush or whatever the case may be. So something like this, I play a lot of throwaway rounds where I say, I'm not going to worry about the score. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can, like the 3-wood, for example, was, okay, so I had a very good drive against the wind, and I would take my 3 hybrid, play it safe, and par the par 5 is how I would typically play. This day, I said, I don't care about the score, so I'm going to take my 3-wood and just get that feel. And that helps a lot, because if you play some of those rounds that way, if you go to the driving range and just, forget about the distance necessarily, just get the feel right, it really helps. The mechanics are so, you need mechanics. 100%. You need the technical aspect. You need to know some of the technical aspect. But for a starting golfer, they start with a feel. It makes things a whole lot easier, in my view. Right? Ultimately, feel eases some of the complexities of a game like this. This is the most difficult sport in the friggin' world. Right? It's that stationary white stupid ball that you got to hit. And it is so hard to do because you got to get so many things right. But if you just get that one simple feel, it corrects a lot of things.
Yeah, exactly. That was the essence of the Axiom.
Yeah.
Is in order to get you to move through these positions correctly, you had to have a feel, right? And that got a lot of people who are already familiar with the dead drill. The Axiom was like, that was the missing for them, right? Like they had wild results really, really quickly. Because I agree, at some point, I always looked at the dead drill as like learn the mechanics first and then turn it into a feel. And there was always a gap there. There was a disconnect there, which led to the Axiom. And now I'm trying to figure out, okay, if I have the dead drill here for mechanics, the Axiom here that blends the mechanics and the feel into one, can you swing the pendulum over here and do it solely by feel? Which is what you guys experience. I didn't give you any mechanics, and I was very careful not to do that. Right. I was trying to say, can I get you all the way to the promised land exclusively through feel, and that gives you the proper mechanics. And all three of these different approaches are effective in their own different ways for different people. But in my opinion, I think that if you can get the exact right feel for everybody in a way that they can all interpret that feel the right way, that leads to the right mechanics, that would be the ideal way to do it. Because as we were talking about earlier, when I'm working on, doing something on my dirt bike, when I don't have time to think mechanics when I'm in the air at 50 miles an hour. But if you give me a feeling, I can start to try and feel it, but it has to be the right feeling. It has to be explained the right way. And so that's really what I'm hoping to come up with, a very simple vocabulary of a simple keywords. Like if you can remember right hip deep, shoulders deep, steep, then all of a sudden you've licked like 90% of the backswing problems, swaying off the ball, hip sliding or whatever, swinging flat. That licks a big chunk of that, right? The transition, you just, falling. And so that's really, I think, if we can get there to where we can have, because we have such a great understanding of mechanics now. Like most instructors have access to all sorts of tools, data measuring tools, stuff you attach to your phone or whatever. And that's all great, but that stuff's really useless to some degree or another. Because if you don't know how to interpret that data and what that data means and how to change that data, then what's the point? It's just telling you what you did, but that doesn't tell you how to change what you did. And so I think if we can get there with a really simple vision of the feel and the words that create the feel, create the mechanics through the feel, then I think everybody will have a heck of a lot more fun with it. And Venkatesh, just for you, one little side note for you, because it was kind of interesting. This is interesting to me too, because I don't play a lot of golf with mid or high handicap golfers. And so it's always interesting to kind of hear your perspective on things. But you said that, normally you would try and par the par fives. Like, okay, I'm here, I'm just going to lay up, and then I'm going to wedge it up here and try to get two putt. If you look at Tiger's stats as an example, throughout his career, he was a little bit over par on the par threes, really close on the par fours, and under par on the par fives.
Right.
And that's how the modern game is played.
Yeah.
And I look at the same thing. I don't attack pins on par threes. I can, but usually on a par three, like if I'm playing a typical course from the back tees, a lot of the par threes I'm playing are 230, 240 yards. So I'm hitting, a 5, 4, maybe even a 3 iron into that. And that's a good way to get in a lot of trouble because all these pins are heavily guarded because you guys aren't playing them from 230, you're playing them from 170. So there's a lot of trouble around them. So on the par threes, I just put up a giant red flag. Like all I'm doing is going for anywhere in the middle of the green, get my two putts, get out of there. Okay. Yeah. The par fours, some I will attack if I have the ability to leverage the driver and whale down the fairway and have a short wedge in. But the par fives, every single par five, I attack. Every single one. It's very rare that I will lay up on a par five, and unless it's stupid to go for it because there's too much trouble. But in general, the only way that you can do that, to play the way that the pros play, is you have to have power. Because if you're forced to lay up because you can't hit a 3-wood 250 yards, then you're playing the game. The game is really playing you, and you can't really attack the game the way it's meant to be played. So I'm glad that you're starting to kind of shift your thinking to be like, yeah, you know what? These par fives, these are the money makers. This is where I'm going to get under par is here.
Yeah, I mean, that's the difference between an 80-plus round and a sub-80 round, in my view, right? Look, if I didn't have a good drive of the driver with the same feel, I wouldn't have a potential makeable 247. The fact that I got to 265 as opposed to 240 is a huge deal. That's 25 yards. I mean, and therefore the 247 of the 3-wood. So that for me, the 15 to 20 yards in the courses that I play will make a humongous difference. Ultimately, you have to two-putt, right? You've got a two-putt. So that's a discipline that I'm learning that is absolutely needed. I know, Chuck, you hate the putting aspect, but you have to do that. You have to putt. You have to have the flat stick. There's no question about that. But to get there and be able to do that is huge. I think it's just absolutely huge.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's exactly why I'm excited about the dead drill. About the power move and what I learned about the feel. The dead drill in the back of my mind will always be there because now it's part of muscle memory, right? Because it's a mechanical thing, it's part of muscle memory, and that's what in my mind, I think the mechanical things need to be muscle memory. The feels are what makes the game so easy on the course. So if I make that part of the muscle memory, so the repetition, etc., I do that, then it's all about when I go play or when I go hit, it becomes all about the feel. I don't know if that makes sense yet. It's made sense now for the last 3 weeks or so. I don't know long term how that will be, but that's what I'm counting on. So,
No, I think it makes total sense. It's helping me too, because sometimes I can go down the direction of
right.
technical versus feel. Trying to get in a position versus kind of feel, especially when you get on the course. Like if you're thinking about putting the club in the right spot, then
Yeah.
you're saying on the par fives, you're like, you're now thinking about attacking. I think
Right.
for a lot of us, when you're struggling, you're thinking about just putting the club in the right place and forgetting
Right.
about even playing the course. So it sounds super interesting. I think that's going to help a lot of people.
Yeah, look, I mean, in the par fours that I play, the par threes are still a work in progress for me. I mean, I played with Chuck, and I hit a 5-iron, 180 some yards. I've never done that before.
Into the wind.
And yeah, it was scissored. Like
Yeah.
that par three is a difficult part. Believe me, that is a super difficult part. So I'm still working on that. But the par fours, my second shot was almost always near the fringe, and from the fringe I can work it to a potential par 90% of the time. And that's the difference that the power swing makes and the feel makes for me. So, you see what, because then you don't, pitching is hard, right? Pitching is hard, but when you're on the fringe, you can get there with an 8-iron flat stick, you can get there with an iron, you can get there with a gap wedge, you can just chunk, kind of push it. I mean, you know what I mean? Or you can even putt from the fringe.
Right.
These courses aren't like pro courses where you can't putt from the fringe. You can putt from the fringe and get it there and two putt and for par. That's a huge difference for amateurs.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Look, man, I know I'm very, very excited about where things are for me. So, I mean, it's genuinely, I'm super excited about this stuff. So, yeah. I have the propensity to work hard and all of that stuff. That's part of the DNA. But holy cats, man, once you get this simple stuff in,
Oh yeah.
ultimately, my goal is to first play to par one of the courses here, and then we'll see where it goes.
What did you shoot last week? What was your lowest score?
Dude, 76.
76. Wow.
4 over.
You're close, man. You're close.
4 over. I'm
I mean,
so
that's a
close.
game changer. That for most people, I mean, honestly, if you think about it, a month ago, you were hoping to break 80.
Correct.
And now you're legitimately thinking about shooting par for the first, or maybe even breaking par, right? I mean, that's a pretty wild transition to go just from like the mindset, right? Like the thing that frustrates me the most with most golfers is one, they just assume they're never gonna hit the ball very far. They've resolved to be like, I'm never gonna hit it further than 220. It's just how it is, right? But we really underestimate our ability to do this stuff because again, we're hitting a ball with a stick. It's truly not rocket science. It's just very basic mechanics in there. But once you get a taste of that and you understand like it truly is just basic mechanics, it's truly basic leverage to get speed. When you think about the golf course in a different way, like I saw it for both of you on the last holes that we played. For Pedro's on the 18th and Venkatesh was on the 9th hole. And he stepped up there and just laced a perfect little tight draw right down the center and it was a tough fairway.
It was.
Right down the middle of the fairway, like 200 and I don't remember what it was, 272. 272, right? So he remembers.
Oh, damn right. And Chuck blew past me, by the way. I tried to convince Chuck to go with a 3-wood because I figured, okay, I'm going to hit one. So for a change that I get, I would drive past him. But he scissored one like 3-something. So,
I did think about going back and grabbing the 3-wood, but then I hit my driver and I just told him, I said, I'm sorry, man, I'm an asshole.
He
I,
did. He actually apologized.
But once you have that, like once you can truly harness power, like that to me is where your mindset changes on the course.
Right.
Like, and you actually moved back a set of tees too, didn't you?
Blue, yeah, playing for the Blues now.
So you not only shooting lower scores, but you've moved back a set of tees, and that, I mean, we all know that golf is so much about confidence, right? Like at the end of the day, when it comes down to past the mechanics, past all that other stuff, it comes down to how you feel about your game and about yourself. And so much of that confidence can be bred on the range before you step out on the course, if you're hitting the ball well. But if you're hitting the ball like shit on the range, you walk up to that first tee and it's a little shaky. Like your hands are shaking. Like, I don't know where this one's going to go. You get paired with somebody you don't know and they're playing all of that stuff weighs in on your ability to score. But once you have that confidence that you're no longer thinking like, okay, I hope my swing works today, or I hope I've got the right swing thought, or whatever it is, and like, okay, I don't have to think about that stuff. I can just go out and play, and I can start positioning the ball and thinking about what kind of shot I want to hit here and those things. That's to me is when the game gets fun and interesting, because it truly is it's a game of strategy when you're playing it. But if you're playing golf swing and golf swing mechanics all the time, you don't ever get to taste what it really feels like to go after and strategically play around a golf, because that's really where the money is. That's where the fun stuff is to me.
Yeah, Pedro, you drove that ball 275. And
now.
Chuck pointed out that I'm like over there, by the way. He did. He actually pointed that out.
He pointed out he was like way ahead.
Yeah, way ahead.
Oh, man.
You hit the shot of your life.
Yeah, I told you guys I was an asshole. I wasn't kidding. I got to put you in your place every now and then, let you know who the daddy is.
Oh, man.
I love hitting the long ball.
The blue and the white for me are also very basic, right? If you're shooting in the high 80s, you better play from the whites, because it's speed of play. Speed of all of those things factor in. I play public courses, so speed of play is a big deal for me.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So that's for sure. Now from the blues, it's a whole different ballgame, right? It's a good 10 yards, somewhere 5 to 10 yards between whites and the blues in my public courses. But I'm super comfortable with that now. You know what I mean? It's huge, man. It's huge. So.
You get a better view back there. You get to see the whole course. And you get to see the course the way the architect probably intended it, especially these older Muni courses. Yeah. The Muni courses were designed from the back tees. Modern courses are designed more from the middle tees, the one that people most going to play, and then they stuff us somewhere in some weird place off in the foreign land for our tee boxes. But the golf course, everything looks different from those tees a lot of times on especially older courses, because like a lot of times the landing areas are more forgiving, because if you're playing the white tees but you're hitting at 275, well, now you're trying to squeeze it into a place there's a choke point or what have you. So I think that you'll see golf differently. Like you go to a really proper golf course, a proper modern course that's properly built from the back tees, and the whole golf course, the aesthetics of it change wildly. But most people they look back there and be like, I ain't going back there. That's crazy, But now you can start to you can do that. You can see the course at its full value.
Yeah, the shot shape also is different, right? I mean, like in like two of the critical holes on the course that I play that I love, right? I mean, it's a fantastic course called Rancho Park. They play the LA Open there. There are two holes that are the nemesis holes. On the whites, you have to hit a fade, right? I mean, how many amateurs can hit the draw? So you have to hit a fade from the whites. From the blues, it's 10 yards back, but you can play that one straight on, and that makes a huge difference, right? So, and that's exactly what happened on Friday for me on those two holes. So,
awesome.
Yeah, man. Hey, man, I could go on and on. I'm so excited. Just so excited about where my game is, right? So,
are you playing this afternoon?
I want that drive, man. I'm driven where I want something to hang my hat on now that I'm not kind of working, right? So that makes a huge difference. And if I can do this at 57 years old, shit,
Were you an athlete? You always been an athlete, right? You were a tennis player. Were you?
Yeah. No, I have. No, that's for sure. I played Indian cricket, which is hugely competitive, tennis in college. Yeah, all kinds of sports, man. I'll play anything. Like
That's awesome.
softball, I play B League softball. There are guys like Canseco who play in my league. So yeah, so I'll play. I'll play pretty much anything.
No, your passion for the game, man. It's cool to see because we're all following you online and just looking at the comments, people are like, "Yeah, man, V is just so excited." So it's almost like it kind of makes me now want to go out and play. I wish I didn't. I actually have a meeting in 10 minutes. I kind of want to skip it and go to the range and go work on the move you were talking about because you're right. When you switch from kind of just going to a course and just spraying and praying, so to speak, just seeing.
Right.
So when you can actually hit shots, hit a good drive, and you can start thinking more strategy. It's a big game changer,
Yeah, makes it a whole lot easier, right? It does make it for me. It makes it a whole lot easier.
Well, keep sending updates. It's cool to watch you and see your updates, and it's inspiring to a lot of us, that want to kind of get down into the 70s. And it seems like you're going to be scratched pretty soon with the way you're
And look, I'm doing it for purely. This is for me selfishly because, when I hit that shot, when I hit at that 247 of my 3-wood, it's orgasmic. Seriously, it is. Just the feel of that is unreal, and I'm doing this purely selfishly for me. I don't want to be a celebrity or anything like that, but I'm happy to share. I'm happy to share all my successes, anything that I have. I'm happy to obviously share, but I don't want the celebrity status necessarily. I'm doing this purely selfishly for my edification of playing great golf. So
you
that's
love this game.
for sure.
You love the game.
100%.
You love the game.
100%. Dude, I watch, the Tokyo Toto Open. So that's how addicted I am. But I learned a lot from women's golf, by the way. Like Nelly Korda.
Yeah.
Holy shit, And that Rose Zhang. Oh, beautiful, beautiful swing.
What's your favorite swing? Who's got your favorite? If you could have any swing, whose swing would you want to have?
TW.
Okay, yeah.
But Nelly Korda, I'll take Nelly's swing any day. Just beautiful, right? Just beautiful. And every time you see that power release is there, she's like the epitome of that power release. Yeah. Hey Chuck, that last video that you and I took at my house when I asked you to explain how that thing, that's money, by the way. I want to share that with Chetan if that's okay with you. He was asking me about the. Yeah, you sure, right? That's a 4-minute video.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, no problem.
So I got a couple other guys pinging me, about.
You're gonna be a swing coach soon.
Yeah. Right.
No.
We're all gonna be.
So the only one that I'm gonna teach is my daughter. Maybe what I'll do, Chuck, is to do what you're doing with your wife and see if. If Marguerite, my wife is willing to do that,
Yeah, it's
I like that. Yeah.
I don't know if I ever told you guys a story, but I actually got offered $50,000 once if I could get this guy's wife to play golf with him. Did I ever tell you that?
Well, I'm not going to offer you that. I certainly don't.
No, let me tell you how the story ended.
Oh, my wife playing with me, man.
So this guy's a famous attorney and all over TV and stuff at the time. And I'm at Castle Pines and I'm working with him and he's super happy with the results he's getting. He's like, man, the only thing that's missing in my life is I wish I could spend more time. I wish my wife shared this passion, wanted to play golf with me. He's like, I'll give you $50,000 if you can get my wife to want to play golf. And I'm like, I'll take a shot at it, whatever, right? So I give her a lesson and she goes out and they play together that day and she shoots the best round of her life by like 8 strokes, right? And she quit the game that day. She just didn't give a shit. She's like, I'm done. So I didn't get the money. He didn't get the wife. And it's just the way it is. But yeah, some wives, my wife, she couldn't care less. But the money wasn't a motivator. I think she'd rather go buy some Louis or something.
He's a unique individual, man. Usually, this is my time alone.
Yeah, exactly.
Just a joke. I love my wife to death. So just a joke. Anyway. Hey, I'm sorry I was late, man.
No worries.
I
You're
hate
clear, man.
being late. So my apologies. And I just didn't get the dang invites.
No worries. No, thanks a lot for coming on. This has been super helpful for me. I'm going to go after, actually at 12 o'clock and go practice some of these moves I'm going to rewatch. I'm actually going to pull that clip and rewatch you do the move. And it's been super cool to kind of hear how it's been progressing. And yeah, we'd love to continue to follow along.
Yeah, where are you located, Pedro?
I'm in the Bay Area, so I'm in San Francisco. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Well,
You're
cool.
in LA from
LA.
LA.
Yeah. I've been here since '93.
Oh wow. Yeah. Okay. Oh wow.
Yeah, I try to convince Chuck that this is a great place. So.
I got a better chance of getting my wife to play golf.
No, I mean, hey, Pedro, I would imagine you love the big city, but
oh yeah,
I don't blame you, Chuck. I mean, if you look at your backyard, don't blame you at all. So, I saw some of the AR-15 video.
I can't figure out what to do with these damn pumpkins. My wife keeps buying them. I keep having to blow them up.
Yeah, that was hilarious. But anyway.
I would have thought the AR-15 would do more damage than it did, but the shotgun, that's the perfect home defense weapon right there.
Yeah, shotgun is, I'm sure. So.
Well, awesome, guys. Well, thanks a lot. We'll be in touch, and we'd love to kind of keep continuing, following your journey. For us members, it's super cool to see and cool to watch and learning from you, man. It's been
sounds great.
Your passion is inspiring.
Absolutely.
All right. Glad you're having fun out there, brother.
You got it. I'll keep you guys in touch. I'll keep the updates going. So.
All right, guys.
All right. Take care.
Cheers.
It's good catching up.
Cheers. Bye.